Welcome to the Web of Weaving Wisdom. I'm Anastasia.
And I'm Lily, and we would like to welcome each one of you, our brothers and our sisters, who are fellow weavers in this time when wisdom is needed, in these transitional times that we're all going through. So hopefully we'll all be able to learn together. Welcome, one and all.
Beautiful, beautiful. So today, fellow weavers, we are going to be talking about a topic which Lily has written many beautiful posts on, which is the idea of rising rooted. So, Lily, can you just explain to our fellow weavers what this concept is of rising rooted? What does it mean to you?
Thank you for asking about it. And I first became aware of Rising Rooted back in 2016 when I read this book by this lovely lady called Sharon Blackie. And it really, at the time, it really spoke to me of the need for us to connect with heart, with soul, with the land, wherever that land is, because fundamentally, all land is sacred. Wherever you stand on the land, you are in sacred lands. And the idea that she proposes in this really quite lovely book, which I do recommend, is that if we pull from our roots, if we pull from our roots and rise them to our hearts, we are drawing on ancestral knowledge. We are drawing on the ancestral power that is within every single molecule, every single cell of the soil. And I call it the soul in the soil.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
I do too, because then you can't just be digging out your tomatoes. Then you can't just be raking leaves. You are literally connecting through the soil with every living being on the land and in the land. And that comes with a tremendous sense of unity. It is a power beyond our own selves, connecting us both to the past, to us in the present, and possibly even into the future. And those three stages are also stages that, as wisdom weavers, we are all moving through in our lives. For example, I was once a maiden, and that ship sailed. And and now I am a mother. And although my children are grown, I'm still mothering to an extent, but I'm also a grandmother. And that brings with it the stepping into the concept of eldership. And Anastasia, your journey has been slightly different because you're at a different stage to me.
Mm.
You've been through maidenhood and you're coming into the power of the mother and the goddess.
Mm.
How does that feel?
Oh, well, Lily, I can tell you, letting go of my maiden was such a difficult thing for me to do. It was such a hard, um, oh, it felt like a death. It felt like
Oh, how
a death.
so?
Yeah, just because, oh, like I felt like a grieving. I felt like I didn't make the most of my maiden years.
Mm.
I felt like I wasted them. I felt like oh, I wish I would have had the guidance that I have now in my younger years and where I could have been if I had the knowledge and the wisdom that I have now, if I had that when, I was like 20 and 30. And now in my 40s, um, it feels, although I don't feel 40, and I know a lot of people at my age as well, like I've had so many conversations with people at my age where we're like, oh, we don't feel 40. And when we look at our grandparents, there's like such a difference in the way that we look and the way that we are. And I think because of there's so many people in sort of my age range that are into like kind of the biohacking and the kind of, really delving into their fitness and their health and things that we don't quite feel that age. But I also know that I am that age, and having to yeah, step up into kind of responsibility and step up into I can. One of the big things that I had to leave behind in my maiden days was leaving behind the victim. Like
Mm,
I really started to understand just how much I'd put myself in this, not that there wasn't experiences in my life that didn't warrant me being in that victim stage, but like I'd stayed in it because it was easy to stay in it, and really owning that, yes, I have been a victim, but what's the that's the root of it, but what's the rising out of that? What's the transformation out of being a victim? So that was something that I really had to do a lot of work on.
that's so powerful, so powerful. And you're definitely weaving the wisdom of the lessons from maidenhood into the rising rooted and letting go of that victimhood. And that's such a hard journey when um, the world distracts you and asks you to perform in a particular way. And, I've got some good news, because when you get into the 60s, which is where I am, all of a sudden, you're not seen anymore. And it's almost like the concept of youth is just the God that everyone worships. And to age gracefully, to step into a different role of, we used to call it the crone. And for me, I actually think there's a great deal of magic in that. But to be willing to take that step, leaving behind the youth, the beauty, and become an empowered woman who is no longer fertile, who no longer has the gift to give the tribe of babies and children, but then has the gift of experience, the wrinkles of wisdom, the power that she then has to hold her tribe in the chalice of rising rooted and help to reconnect all of those little threads that come from the DNA, from the children, from the maidens and the mothers, right through to the fellow elders. And I think if we are to weave wisdom in transitional times, we need all the support we can get.
Mm.
Tribe Now is a global phenomenon, mostly conducted online. And we know this from Facebook, from Twitter, Instagram, or X, I should say, and the connectivity that we have. And yet we're all dying from lack of connection, having, ironically, got the biggest connection that there has ever been at our disposal in our pockets, in our computers. And that instant communication is not bridging people who long and yearn for the connection. And this is where rising rooted comes in. Because if you are rising rooted, you are never alone. You are always connected to your land, wherever that is. You are always connected to your ancestors who hold love, power, grace, wisdom that they want to impart to us at every moment. They are egging us on. They are encouraging us to stand in our power, to reunite the strands of ourselves into a more coherent and cohesive pattern in the weave that we're all continuously weaving together.
Mm. I think we're really going to see that as well. I mean, for me, just like speaking on, because you know how much I love Jung's work.
Mm,
For me,
yeah,
the soil really reminds me of the collective unconscious.
yeah.
And, the personal and the collective unconscious. It's like it's where everything. It's the feminine. It's where things are birthed. It's the darkness. It's our origins.
Mm,
It's our connection to like you said, the earth and to Gaia and to all of that kind of magic and that wisdom. But on your connection piece, I think that is something that we're longing for community, aren't we? We're
yeah,
longing to, because I think traditionally we were just born and raised into communities and we stayed there. And I think as we've gone through this transition of our consciousness really changing, we don't necessarily belong so much to the original kind of what we
mm,
were born into. So for me, I was like born and raised in Manchester, and when I go back there, I feel like a little bit like an alien because it's although my roots are there and I deeply love it as a city, and I love the people, and I love the friendliness and things. There's still this aspect of me where it's like, oh, there's this like longing for this tribe that kind of exists in the ether, but it doesn't exist in necessarily in physical world. And I think that's something that as we move into this age of Aquarius and we move into this transitional time, if we're going to get through some of the things that we're going to be facing, especially next year with the astrology just being kind of really crazy, we're gonna have to lean into we're gonna have to lean into being together a little bit more, and meeting in the physical and being present in the physical as well.
There's another aspect to this, which I think you've just touched on very beautifully in talking about Jung and the so-called unconscious. And I should just get straight from the outset that I do not believe, well, belief is an interesting word in itself, in the unconscious. I think it's all conscious. It's just that our awareness is very specifically focused on what we consider to be our waking environment, whereas consciousness is aware and awake all the time. And we've had such huge transitional shifts in how people's consciousness has raised over the last few months, a few years, possibly even a decade. I think there was a huge change in around about 2012 when people suddenly started to question everything, to not look at the lamestream narratives that were being peddled, and which are even worse now, but look at what their hearts were telling them, drawing again on the soul of the soil to understand that their reality when we step out of doors is that the trees are, doing tree stuff, the birds are singing, animals are all around us, and they're in their moment. They are connected and they know they are. And so, with all of the connectivity in the world, while we're starving for the community, for the local, for the literal family, and it's become a global family. And when I say the word family, I'm not restricting it to humans either, because as consciousness rises, animals, birds, trees, flowers, all of it, bees, I've seen it very strongly with bees, in that there is this collective change. And it's a change in the understanding and I think the appreciation of the fact that everything in the web of weaving wisdom is connected. We're all strands upon the web, whether we're mineral, rock, tree, plant, flower, pip, seed, nut, whether we have fur or scales, whether we have feathers, all of the nations of all of the weave of the web is connected one to another. And it's an inextricable connection that to some extent, certain forces in this world have tried to break. But as consciousness and wisdom weaving rises, and the more it rises rooted, those connections become very strong. They nourish us. They uplift us. And the earth herself is doing the same thing. And so is the cosmos above. These transitional times are all about the dance, the music of every component within the orchestra. And that's a very exciting thing for all people who know that we're weaving wisdom.
Mm, mm. And even just to touch on the dark for a moment, even the dark serves a purpose for awakening.
Absolutely.
In fact, one could argue on a really high level that the dark is serving an extremely important purpose in waking us up. And if you look in the collective now, if you see all the different threads from, you've got the Diddy stuff going on, you've got the drone stuff going on in the States, which is,
Mm.
well, I'm sure a lot of people have different opinions. I think it's personally something to kind of control maybe on one level. You've got all these different like little agendas, so many so that like even just keeping, not that I watch the news that much, but I do keep a little tab on it to know
Mm.
what's going on in the world. There are so many different stories. It's like we're bombarded with things to wake us up now. Like the collective is literally bombarded from every single angle, from people realizing that the governments are run through deep states. Like normal, average, everyday people know that their governments another government that runs them. Most people are aware of that now. Most people are aware that the mainstream media is telling us lies. Most people are aware that there is chemicals in our food that is killing us. We're becoming aware, and this kind of this momentum, this snowball of awareness cannot help but lead to something wonderful, I think, personally.
Mm.
I'm really excited for humanity. I know that it's gonna be really, really difficult next year because I think some people, and I also think as well, I'm just going off on a little tangent. I think it's really important if you have gone through this huge awakening journey, it's by no accident that you've been through all of this, because you're here to support the other people that are going to be moving along on this awakening journey.
Mm.
If the collective all wakes up now, we've got a bloody hard job on our hands, because there's going to be a lot of people that are in a lot of trauma.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we see that every full moon. It's the darkness is there to provide contrast so that we exercise free will. And we are given that free will at every step, even at the minute, tiny level. Our everyday decisions, our everyday choices, our everyday exercise of free will leads us somewhere. And it can either lead towards more darkness or it can lead to more light. And when you rise rooted, when your feet are planted in the soil, when you are connected to everything and you acknowledge and know that, you will make decisions based for all our relations, for all life as it exists, not just for yourself. And that brings both power and responsibility. And that's true adulting in a way. For me, it's the way of the true-hearted spirit. And there are more and more and more true-hearted spirits treading lightly upon this planet now, rising in awareness and beginning to really make a difference. And that's the web of weaving wisdom.
Do you want me to tell you something really funny?
Of course.
Right, so I have this little
Who
fidget.
doesn't need a laugh?
I have this little fidget toy that I play with, and as you said something really powerful, and it just burst.
Oh my Lord.
You burst my fidget toy with your wisdom.
It's not mine, it's everybody's.
I
But
know
it
it's
has,
everybody's, but
yeah, yeah.
it was such an interesting synchronicity that I could not just keep to myself.
I love it. But then again, that's another clue to the weaving of wisdom, because
Mm.
it is entirely along the path that Jung laid out for us in synchronicity. And in a way, that also links to the Grail, because the Grail Knights all followed the trail of synchronicity, meeting magical beings upon the way. And the thing about synchronicity is that there is a beautiful flow to it. There is a beautiful grace within it. When you are listening, I'm not talking about hearing. Anybody can hear. We can hear heavy metal music, or we can choose beautiful classical music. Like, for example, the piece that we use in our intro, which is by Vaughan Williams, and it's called The Lark Ascending. And these uplifting and beautiful threads of wisdom weave through music, through literature, through art, but they also weave through us. And when you know that, not only do you see the darkness and the light, but you are making continuous choices towards something that will encourage, uplift, and transform ultimately our whole world.
Mm. Oh,
Never
Lily.
doubt, never doubt that cohesive, collective thought at a group conscious level can change the world, because that's all that's ever changed it.
There's so many things that I want to ask you from this. Can you because you've shared so much with me. One of the reasons, just so the fellow weavers know what I'm speaking into here. One of the reasons why we really wanted to have this podcast was me and Lily would have these like really great kind of, I call them little alchemical activating conversations, and I was like, Lily, we cannot not share these conversations.
No.
They're just they feel too important not to share. So we've spoken at length on the Grail. Can you tell a little bit for those that aren't familiar with the Grail legends? Can you share a little bit more about that?
Well, sometimes it's where to begin. At the very beginning, once upon a time, there was a wonderful man, and there still is a wonderful man called Rory Duff, and some of you know his work. He put out a wonderful video, a documentary, in which he was following the Grail Trail down in southern France and also in Spain. And he discovered a variety of clues left by the Knight Templars. And these clues related more to energy than to anything of any religious note. And his studies and research led to him putting out a hypothesis that the Templars were fully aware of earth energy lines, what people sometimes call ley lines, but for the purposes of definition, I'll be using the term earth energy lines. And these are amazing high frequency or low frequency lines that move throughout the landscapes, but particularly seem to gather or congregate even at sacred sites, such as, for example, stone circles, burial mounds, all kinds of places, and particularly also noticeable in chapels and churches, because a great many of those were built on the sites of previous sacred sites. They were kind of hijacked, if you like. But that said, because of the focus of attention from people in churches and the beautiful prayer and song and the energy of people praying together, those energies have only increased over time. And that's a lovely, noteworthy point. Not all churches are bad folks. In fact, many of them have very beautiful earth energy lines moving through them. Anyway, Rory's work culminated, I think, in 2012 when he rediscovered the earth energy lines coming back with such power and force. And he called these the Emperor Dragon lines. And they cross over the earth at only 6 places on land. And notably, they are at sites, for example, like Uluru in Australia, which has been a sacred site for the indigenous peoples there since time began, probably even before then. And these beautiful emperor dragons have been gaining in strength, gaining in width, gaining in power at 4 very particular times of the year. The equinoxes of autumn and spring, and the solstices of summer and winter. And what happens at these sacred times of the year are that the normally serpentine movement of the earth energy lines become cohesive and come into alignment with each other. And at that time, where they cross over, and sometimes multiple lines can cross, nodes are formed. And at these nodes, Rory theorized that torus fields would then develop as the lines spiraled and moved and created the double torus. Now, if you don't know, we are double Tauruses ourselves. We stand within a massive energy field, which centers, not surprisingly, on the heart and flows up and out, as well as down and round to create these beautiful apple. Eve with her apple might just be a symbol for it. Cut an apple in half, it's a
You
double
mean
Taurus.
she wasn't bad?
I mean, she knew what she liked, and she was a fruity lass. Good.
Yeah. Mm.
So at the harmony times, which is Rory's term for it, all over the planet, these high concentration fields of earth energy lines form these beautiful double Tauruses. And Rory's theory there was that this was the chalice of the Grail. Throughout literature, it's been a cup, it's been a plate, it's been a bowl, it's been a platter, it's been a bloodline, it's been Mary and the child that Jesus bore, it's been many, many things. But the knowledge of it appears from the Templar perspective to be geometric. They left lots and lots of symbols. Even their own cross-pate that they wore on their tunics is a symbol of two earth energy lines crossing. The cross itself might be as well. And if anyone's interested in that, look at the work of Crichton Miller with the Celtic cross. And maybe that was a very early navigation device, utilizing possibly the earth energy lines to map travel all over the world in a time when most of history would tell us that we weren't doing a lot of traveling. So that's another little interesting aside. But back to the Templar understanding, they then, from nowhere, having spent time in the Holy Lands, allegedly protecting pilgrims on the road to Jerusalem, which is evidentially something they never did. Instead, they excavated the tomb of King Solomon, and in the excavations quite possibly found something. At this point, we know not what. We could speculate, but what's the point? At this point, they came to Europe and suddenly became incredibly powerful builders of Gothic cathedrals like you have never seen. Prior to the Templars, most churches were little wattle and daub or wooden structures, possibly brick if they were in a bigger city environment like Paris or London. After the Templars got back from Jerusalem, we got places like Chartres, we got Notre Dame, we got all the beautiful cathedrals like Winchester, Westminster, York Minster. We got incredible architecture, all centered around earth energy lines, which noded on many of the sites. There's a beautiful labyrinth laid out on the floor of Chartres Cathedral, and the node is straight there. People walking that, whether knowingly or unknowingly, are actually absorbing the node when they're there on the solstices or the equinoxes. So there is another component to this, which is the cosmic one. And the cosmic one is that roughly every 12,000 years, half of a precessional equinox, we pass through something called the galactic current sheet. And this is a very high frequency, high energy band in the cosmos that very little is known about in terms of astronomy. But we are now just starting, concurrently with the so-called age of Aquarius and the Plutonian aspects of this, to move. Our Earth is moving into and is partially in the galactic current sheet now. In previous times, when the Earth has gone into the galactic current sheet, we've had renaissance, even when we've just passed by. This current journey of our Earth is taking us directly into it. And the theory is that this will bring the golden age, together with the emperor dragons returning and gaining in strength all the time. And Rory's research just prior to his recent illness was that the lines themselves are now developing shadow lines. Not shadow in the sense of something dark, but shadow in the sense that they are reflecting even more lines. And the idea is, and we don't know yet, so we are still speculating, but dowsers around the world are noting that the lines are much longer and wider, and that they are above and below. Don't forget, this isn't just on the surface or in the soil, it's above and below, and the dance of frequency between all of it. And the thing is that with the best will in the world, we don't know the extent of what's going to happen or how it's going to happen. But what we do know is that there's an increase in the activity of the earth energy lines, and that something seems to be powering up from deep within the earth's core. And that is being reflected on the surface, it's being reflected above in the sky with what's happening in the cosmos. And it's also seeming to affect collective consciousness. And it's no surprise to me that the rise in collective consciousness and the awakening, as people call it, and the scales falling from people's eyes at this very important time started around about 2012. And I would ask all of our wisdom weavers, and please leave a comment below for us about this, because we'd love to hear your experience. But an awful lot of people that I know who weave wisdom tell me that there was a point, usually around the solstices or equinoxes of 2012, when literally it was like the veil fell before their eyes and they started to see things in a very different way. And that perception has only increased and only gained momentum until we sit here 12 years later, seeing such positive affirmations of people being kind, of people stopping the online fighting to a degree, the dualism of I'm right, you're wrong, the absolute curiosity to learn more about where we're going, not based on where we've been, because the mistakes of history are past, but more on what can we learn from our Earth Mother herself? What can we ourselves bring to help all life, all land, wherever it manifests, to be living in harmony together? And that was why Rory coined the phrase, the harmony times. And the other good news, which I would love to share with all of you wisdom weavers, is that the harmony times are lengthening. Back in the time of the Templars, it might have been only a few hours where the torus field and the energy lines created the torus field. And now it's many days. It's extended to between 60 and 90 days. And come 2025, we are speculating that it might be all year round.
Ooh,
And
that's
that means that you can go to your local earth energy site or sacred spot and receive a top up of the Grail energies of the torus field to help you heal, to help you rise in your own thinking, to give you inspiration, to pray for world peace, to do any number of things that you feel moved to do. And that is such a positive, uplifting thing for all of humanity. And yes, I know if we read the news or we look at the papers, we are bombarded with gloom and doom. And I'm sitting here today to tell you nothing at all could be further from the truth.
Oh, that's giving me shivers. You know, it's interesting you talk about this 2012 because um, I noticed that I went through that experience myself, and that's when you know, my own real awakening within began
Mm.
because I'd been awakening. You know, I was very fortunate. My dad sort of introduced me to conspiracies at a young age. So, I knew that Diana didn't die how she died, and I knew that 9/11 wasn't the real story, and but my own inner awakening, which is really important. I think sometimes what gets lost, especially in the truth movement, is it's just about the external, the government's doing this, the government's doing that, and
Oh,
it
yeah.
and it's an inside job as well. Like, you've got to awaken within. So in 2012, I started to have this inner awakening. But what I noticed, and I noticed it with clients, because I started getting clients that were kind of coming to me, and they were like, Anastasia, I've just realized, this was in 2020, that, you know, everything that was, I don't want to say everything because of the algorithms, but other things that
Mm,
get picked up. But I think most people know that what I'm referring to in 2020. And I had this influx of clients that would come to me and be like wanting to work with me um, because of the background that I have with IFS and Jung. And it was just interesting to me that we had these like points in society where we were having this awakening, and I think we're at another one in 2025. Like, I really sense that, especially with all this kind of stuff that's just in the mainstream at the moment, with all these different stories, it's just going to awaken so many people. So it's exciting, and it makes sense that the earth would support us in that journey. It makes sense
mm,
that she would hold us, because that's what a mother does, right? A mother holds her children when she's going through a deep when the children are going through a heavy experience. It's the mother that we rest into. So it's
mm.
interesting, but it's really interesting as well that we're having all this kind of cosmic stuff that's going on as well, with the aurora, which I know you've been following like heavily for a number of years now. So it's like what they're mirroring one another. It's like the earth and the skies are, the logos, the father sky, whatever label you want to give it, the cosmic father, is mirroring the earth mother, which I find really interesting.
Well, it's Hermetic wisdom. It's as above, so below, as without, so within. And that's a very important aspect that you've just mentioned about working on the shadow within, knowing your own shiz. Let's call it shiz. We don't want the algorithms pinging, do we? And we don't want to offend anyone. Um, One thing I'd just like to get back to that you just mentioned about 2025 being a very big year. It's really interesting because we were wrong, because 2012 to 2024 is a nice 12-year cycle. And very often we find the number 12 popping up with great regularity. For example, in Templar churches, the rose windows often have 12 petals or 24, and the multiples thereof. But we were wrong because, because patience is now needed. We're coming up now to a time which we all know is massively transitional, massively pivotal almost for planet Earth and for all life upon her. And not just in perhaps our neck of creation, because there's the cosmos, as you've rightly said. But it's actually likely now that we think it'll be the equinox of 2025 when the harmony time will be continuous.
Which equinox, the spring or
The
the
spring equinox in
spring?
March.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
it'll be the
wow.
spring equinox in March. Yeah. We were thinking previously, and this is based on the dowsing work of Rory, as I've mentioned, and many, many other dowsers as well, all over the world, is that we think it's more likely to be happening in 2025. Quite why we're a little late, if not, if we are indeed late, we don't know. But there is this sort of, there's a little bit of fragility about this time that we're moving into. You've rightfully mentioned the drones and the UAP activity that's happening globally, not just in New Jersey or America. We had a recent one in Suffolk, I believe, in England and elsewhere. These are very fragile times, as we know, because the parasites in power, and by that you can put any other label you like on it, but there are parasites in power and they are not out for the planetary good or the good of humanity. Just stating. That said, there's always been predicted that there would be some kind of false alien flag. And At the moment, I think they're just doing a little test run to see what public reaction is to the drones, I'm putting that in inverted commas, to gauge public opinion, to see if lots of people are believing it. And it could well be that that's just a sort of test rollout. That said, we don't know where they're going with it, because let's face it, we do not have full disclosure on UAPs. We haven't had for so long. And bearing in mind that people have been seeing unidentified aircraft for not just the last, most people date it from Roswell in 1947, don't they? But there are pictures of aliens on petroglyphs in Arizona that were drawn by tribal peoples back 2,000 years ago, possibly even further. There are sightings in all kinds of literature with sailors on the high seas when we first started becoming maritime peoples after whatever massive global catastrophe occurred. And so this is not a new phenomena. It's not a new thing. What is new is the tech that they have developed, which mirrors that. And so all of the wisdom weavers that are gathered here today, they will see through whatever imaginary landscape they try to plunge us into. They will understand from their roots that what is being done is quite likely about power and control, and is possibly also linked to anything nuclear as well. Because let's face it, the fingers have been hovering over buttons for a rather long time, and lately the finger is very close.
Mm.
So it's not all doom and gloom, as I've said. And one of the most spectacular things that you can do to nourish yourself, wisdom weavers, is get yourselves to your local node. Now, yes, I know that's tricky for you to know where your node is, but on the harmony time, which is today, but will last for a long time. So don't have FOMO here. Don't have fear of missing out, because you haven't. There's so much time between now and when the Taurus fields stop being in harmony, that you've got probably a couple of months. So all you have to do is gather in a little group, if you're in a meditation group already, or if you have a spiritual group that you're part of, whatever it is. And even if you're on your own, just go anyway and gather at the site. Instinctively, if you're rising rooted, you will know where that is. If not, go on Rory Duff's website, where there's more details and there's a lot more site-specific places that you can go. And that's all over the world, not just in the UK, which is where we're based. So go to these sites, and what we do is incredibly simple, but in my experience, simple is often the best. We breathe in peace and we breathe out love for a while. In meditation, quietly at the site. Sometimes we hold hands, sometimes we sit on the ground. And then we reverse it by breathing in love and breathing out peace. And that means that anyone can come and do it. You don't need any fancy schmancy stuff. You don't need crystals or gongs or music or pipes or...
Do you need the outfit, Lily? Do you need to dress up? Do you need a costume?
You do not even need flowers in your hair. You need
Oh,
nothing. You can if you
oh,
want. Of course you can if you want. I often put a feather in my hair if I find one at the site. But breathe in love, breathe out peace. Breathe in peace, breathe out love. Connect with the node. You might not feel anything. You might feel lots. You might feel a tingling. You might feel or even see the energy. Some people do. It's quite an amazing thing. We're all different, and that's our talent and our joy and our contribution to the tribe. Everybody brings something different. And I had the great joy of Anastasia coming to the Rudston node, which is here in East Yorkshire. And that's a beautiful ancient monolith, probably around about 3000 BC when that was put up. right next to the All Saints Church. As I said earlier, the church liked to get in on the act, so they built their little church there. And it's in a graveyard too, which all of which adds to its appeal if you've got a certain Gothic temperament. But the power of the Rudston is that there are 4 pairs of type 4 energy lines going straight through that stone and in the area just around it. So in for the last 30 years, I've been going there, and it's actually nearly 35 years.
Oh,
I
wow.
know this is what happens when you get old. You start measuring time in decades, and it starts getting a little bit unwieldy. It's also fun. And I've been going there for a very long time and running very small group events where people can come, and it is not religious. You do not have to believe in anything other than yourself. And all you have to bring is yourself, dressed up with feathers or flowers or whatever if you want, but otherwise just bring you. And I had the great pleasure of Anastasia coming to visit the Rudston with me on the it was the autumn equinox, wasn't it?
We went the autumn equinox and the summer equinox the year before as well.
That's right, you came on that one too, which was lovely. So please tell the wisdom weavers a little more about what your experience was like when you came.
So I was going through, oh gosh, it felt like the worst breakup that I'd ever experienced in my existence because we broke up in a very abrupt way right before my 40th birthday. And this was somebody I thought I was going to marry. I thought I was moving to America. I thought my whole life, I thought I'd kind of had planned. And we broke up, and it was very abrupt, and it was very, very difficult. And
Mm.
I could not eat any food. And this is quite embarrassing to share this, but I could not eat any food other than Maltesers. It was the only thing I could eat. And my family were really worried about me. My mum, I'm from an Irish family, so my mum was like sending me food round and all sorts of things. And if anybody knows, if anybody's watching from the States, Maltesers are like these little round chocolate balls. And I'd even be trying to like reframe it in my mind, going, right, Anastasia, you're eating little balls of poo here. Don't eat them. Don't eat them. And I'd be really trying to reframe it, and I couldn't. And then I went to the Rudston, and I was like, I really prayed. I really prayed, and I was like, right, okay, I need to stop eating these Maltesers. I need to just, eat some proper food and nourish my body and all of that good stuff. And I said that prayer, and I really sat with some of the things that was going on internally within me. I allowed them to release to the earth, and I haven't, to this day, touched a Malteser. That's a true story.
So you two can give up any addictions you need. Just get yourselves to a local node.
But it fascinated me that because I've been working on it for so long in so many different, with lots of psychological modalities. I'd even tried some cleanses because I thought, oh,
Yeah.
what if I've got some parasite in me that's kind of addicted to Maltesers? I was doing, lots of spiritual clearing, and it was only with the help of the earth that I was able to release that, and him as well, which was interesting.
And the node.
Mm.
Because that's the power of the Grail. It will give you what you need when you need it. And sometimes what you don't know you need, but you do, and you might not welcome either. It can have quite startling effects, but it is a very, very uplifting thing to do. It's also really lovely to connect with people, because when you're meditating at nodes on the solstice or on the equinox, you are meditating with a global family, because people all around the world are coming together in group consciousness at that time to uplift the world, to pray for peace for all land and all life, howsoever it manifests, whether it's seen or unseen. The power of that is increasing, and as we move into 2025, it will increase to the point where it doesn't stop. So you better get used to it, folks. It's coming. It's coming.
I think it's really important as well that people understand group consciousness, because
Mm.
when I first heard like unity consciousness, I got a bit like, I was a bit that's a
Mm,
bit new agey for me. I was like, what does that mean? Does that mean I have to give up my individuation? Does that mean I have to give
no.
up, who I am, and what are we all going to just walk around in white singing Kumbaya? I was a bit like, I was a bit, I was a bit like kind of like, oh, I don't like the sound of this unity consciousness, but then. I did a little research on it, and also inside of myself as well, and then it landed in me when I sort of realized, oh, it's the kind of the theory of the drop in the ocean, we
And
are.
the ocean in the drop, exactly.
Yeah, so that's how it landed in me, and I started to understand it on a deeper level. But yeah.
It's not going to be some massively noisy thing where you can hear everyone's thoughts. You're just connecting in, just like you would if you were remote viewing or sending some healing to someone that you love who perhaps lives across the ocean. The key is that there is no separation between us. We've been brainwashed to believe that there is. There is absolutely nothing between my heart beating and yours. We are all connected all the time. It's just that we filter it out.
Mm.
And in meditation, that's the time when we can come together consciously, actively, and you're not going to lose your individual beingness. In fact, what you're doing is adding your beautiful individual beingness onto the web to connect up with other people on the web, almost like little crystalline dewdrops on a spider's web. And you come together for that time, but you'll come back to yourself. And in fact, your own unique pattern, frequency, vibration, and being is enriching the all. It's enriching the oneness. You will never lose the work you've done individuating, as Jung would have it. You
Mm.
will never lose that. In fact, that is an absolute gift that you bring for the rest of the tribe.
And just for anybody who's on kind of a little feels like it's a little bit new agey, it's the opposite of what dark magicians have been doing.
For centuries.
Yeah, it's the opposite. It's the good spell instead of the negative spell. It is the good spell that you're putting out to humanity and to one.
And and it's also about intention, which of course the dark magicians and sorcerers down time have known about. It is time now to insert the good sorcery, the light, to bring back the love and the way we live now is not how humans should be living. We are meant to be in community, unity. We are meant to support each other. And that's partly why this web of weaving wisdom was born in the chalice of Anastasia and myself, because we both enriched each other's journeys. And we felt that maybe we could make that as an offering to you as well. Because, for example, on my Facebook, I find people coming daily and wanting, seeking, and hopefully finding connection and joy and love and care and support. And for me, that's a huge honor personally. And I just want to thank every single one of my Facebook followers and friends. And by the way, I hate the word follower, but whatever we got. It's what they're called. But from my point of view, you're not followers, you're not friends, you're family. Every one of you. And every day you enrich me. And I'm a little emotional about that.
Oh. Oh, I love that. I love that. I really do. I really do. Well, your posts are so uplifting, and I think people, for many of us who've been kind of fighting the good fight for so long, I think we're a
Mm.
little bit like tired of fighting, and we need a little bit of uplifting. We need the change to like really manifest now. We've been talking about the dark for so bloody long. I mean, it feels like eons, and it feels like it's a time for the light to shine now.
I think that when we bring in concepts of fight or battle or striving, we, we're buying back into an old web, an
Mm.
old
Yeah.
paradigm. And that's not to criticize the warriorship that so many of us have carried for so long. But I think your weariness of it, and perhaps our fellow wisdom weavers' weariness, is that actually it's time to put the sword down. And that's not to say it's a passive putting down, because there are battles all the time in life. I know there are struggles, and we need our shields and our swords. On the personal, when my father was passing away in June, every single day at his bedside in the hospital, I had to be Queen Boadicea with a sword and a shield and a probably horned helmet, even, just to protect his peace, just to allow that mighty spirit to pass with some grace in an environment that was anything but. So there are moments to pick a battle. There are moments to defend and protect. But mostly now we need to unite, to join together, to harmonize with our earth rising rooted to our hearts, both for each other, for every form of life, for all the relations upon this planet right now. And that also includes those we cannot see. Because just because we can see them with our eyes doesn't mean they're not there. They are. Blessing each and every one. And to that end, I would like to just light a candle
Yes.
and honor each and every one of the flames imperishable within each one of our wisdom weavers. To you, Anastasia, and to each one of the people gathered here, I wish you a meaningful, enlightening, and gloriously beautiful winter solstice. So you talk amongst yourselves while I light a candle for us.
I love that, Lily. I love that. You've illuminated so much for me. I mean, I know a lot of this information because I'm lucky enough to know you personally, but some of the uh, information you were sharing about the harmony lines just sunk a little bit deeper. And I recently watched Rory's documentary on the chalice, and it's wonderful. We'll link it in the description. So yeah, I will let you enjoy the light.
Well, this is a little candle. Actually, it's quite big, really, but
It's a very big candle, that, Lily.
yes. May the sacred fire burn ever brightly in our hearts. May the waters flow within our veins. May the air inspire us in every breath. And may the Mother Earth beneath our feet help us to rise rooted now and always. Blessings, happy harmony time, and much love to each one of you.
Oh, nice, very nice. Thank you, Lily. That was really beautiful and special for you to lead us through that blessing on the day where it is darkest. That was really beautiful and felt like a return to light. Fellow wisdom weavers, if you have enjoyed this episode and you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. And if there is anything that you would like myself and Lily to cover in the future, please also leave that in the comments below. If you like this, please subscribe.
My dear fellow friends, family, you are always welcome to ask questions. And personally, and I know Anastasia will welcome this too, please tell us your own experiences, especially if you've been to a node. I'd love to hear how that's gone for you, and I would like to honor it, because It is such a special time to be alive right now. We're witnessing change like we've never seen before. And to be part of that and to have a tiny little sort of role within it, each one of us is sacred on this path. And not only do we honour each and every one of you, but we would love to welcome you back to talk further about how we weave wisdom in transitional times, because this is a shared journey. It's not about me. It's not about Anastasia. This is about helping and supporting you on your journey. And by doing that, as I've said earlier, you're helping us too.